He was 3 days into harvest when the hydraulic line exploded. Not a slow leak, not a warning drip. A full rupture at 2400 RPM, hot oil spraying across the cab floor, the Massey Ferguson 6713 shuddering to a halt in the middle of a wheat field that still had 40 acres to cut. The kind of failure that doesn't just stop your day, it stops your season. And when you're running a combined schedule with weather closing in and a grain elevator contract that penalizes late delivery, a dead tractor in August isn't an inconvenience. It's a financial catastrophe. Mehmet Yilmaz stood in that field, staring at the oil pooling under his machine, and made the call every farmer dreads. He dialed the dealer. The same dealer who sold him the tractor 14 months ago. The same dealer who shook his hand and promised full support anytime, any problem. The same dealer whose service line rang 11 times before someone finally picked up. The voice on the other end was bored, not rushed, not apologetic, just bored. Mehmet explained the situation. Hydraulic failure, harvest season, 40 acres standing. He needed the part. Fast. There was a pause. The kind of pause that already tells you the answer. Then the voice said it. 6 weeks, maybe 8. The part's coming from Germany. Supply chain issues. You'll have to wait. Mehmet asked if there was any way to expedite it. The voice said no. He asked if there was a compatible part from another model. The voice said they don't do cross-compatibility. He asked if they could at least send a technician to inspect it, confirm the diagnosis, maybe find a workaround. The voice said technicians are booked through September. Then the line went quiet. Not dead, just quiet. The kind of quiet that means the conversation is over, even though nothing has been solved. Mehmet stood there with the phone against his ear, listening to silence, watching his wheat sway in the wind, knowing that every day it stayed uncut was another day closer to rain, to lodging, to total loss. He hung up. He didn't throw the phone. He didn't curse. He just stood there in the heat, surrounded by machinery that was supposed to be the best decision he ever made, and realized that he was alone. The dealer wasn't coming. The part wasn't coming. The technician wasn't coming. And the wheat didn't care. It was going to fall or rot or blow away. And the only person who was going to pay for it was him. This is the story of what happened when a man bought a Massey Ferguson, trusted the system that sold it to him, and learned that when the machine fails, the dealership walks away. It's the story of a hydraulic line, a broken promise, and the neighbor who fixed it in 3 days when the professionals said it couldn't be done. It's about the moment a farmer realizes that the brand name on the hood doesn't mean anything if the people selling it don't show up when it matters. And it's about what happens when that farmer decides he's done waiting. Mehmet Yilmaz wasn't new to farming. He wasn't some weekend hobbyist who bought a tractor because it looked tough. He ran 320 acres outside Edirne, mostly wheat and sunflower, and he'd been doing it for 19 years. His father had farmed the same land before him, his grandfather before that. This wasn't a side business, it was the only business. And when he bought the Massey Ferguson 6713 in June of last year, it wasn't an impulse. He researched. He compared specs. He test drove 3 different models. He sat with the dealer for 2 hours going over financing, warranty terms, service agreements. He asked about parts availability. He asked about response time. He was told everything he wanted to hear. We have the largest parts inventory in the region. We have certified technicians on call. We have a mobile service unit. You're not just buying a tractor, you're buying peace of mind. Mehmet signed the contract. He shook hands. He drove the Massey Ferguson home and put it to work. For 14 months, it performed exactly as advertised. Strong, reliable, efficient. The 6-cylinder engine pulled like a freight train. The hydraulics were smooth, responsive, never hesitated. Mehmet used it for tillage, planting, baling, everything. He put 890 hours on it in the first year. He changed the oil on schedule. He greased the fittings. He followed the maintenance book to the letter. He did everything right. And then, on the 3rd day of harvest, in the middle of a field, with no warning, the hydraulic system failed. Not because of neglect, not because of abuse. It failed because a factory-installed hose, routed too close to the exhaust manifold, heated up over time, weakened, and finally gave out under pressure. A design flaw, a known issue, something the manufacturer should have caught in testing, something the dealer should have flagged during pre-delivery inspection. But nobody caught it. And now, Mehmet was standing in a field with a dead tractor and a dealer on the phone telling him to wait 2 months. He called back the next morning. Different person. Same answer. He asked to speak to the service manager. The service manager wasn't available. He asked for a callback. No one called back. He drove to the dealership that afternoon, walked into the parts department, and asked to speak to someone in person. The parts guy looked up the part number, checked the system, and said the same thing. 6 weeks. Mehmet asked if there was any other option. The guy shrugged. Not really. It's a specialized hose. Can't just swap it with something generic. Has to be OEM, and OEM is on back order. Mehmet asked why. The guy said he didn't know. Mehmet asked if they could call the distributor, put pressure on the order, maybe get it bumped up the priority list. The guy said they don't do that. Mehmet stood there for a moment, staring at the man behind the counter, and realized that this conversation was going exactly nowhere. He wasn't being helped. He was being managed. The dealership had already written him off. They'd filed his case under waiting for parts and moved on. There was no urgency, no problem solving, no care. He left the dealership and drove home in silence. His wife asked what they said. He told her. She asked what they were going to do. He didn't have an answer. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a notebook, running the numbers. 40 acres of wheat at current market price. Grain elevator contract penalties for late delivery. Rental cost for a backup tractor if he could even find one available. Lost income from delayed sunflower planting. The total came to somewhere between 75,000 and 95,000 lira, depending on how long the delay lasted and how bad the weather got. He looked at that number and felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't a minor setback. This was the kind of loss that could break a season, maybe break a farm. And the dealer didn't care. They had his money. They had his signature. They had already moved on to the next sale. The next morning, Mehmet's neighbor, Hassan, stopped by. Hassan farmed the adjacent property, ran a smaller operation, mostly barley and chickpeas. He'd seen the Massey Ferguson sitting idle in the field and came over to ask what was going on. Mehmet explained the situation. Hassan listened, didn't say much, just nodded. Then he asked to see the tractor. They walked out to the field together. Hassan climbed up into the cab, looked at the burst hose, traced the line back to the pump, checked the fittings, ran his hand along the routing. He was quiet for a long time. Then he climbed down and said, "I think I can fix this." Mehmet stared at him. Hassan wasn't a certified technician. He didn't have a dealership behind him. He ran a small repair shop out of his barn, mostly worked on his own equipment, occasionally helped other farmers with basic maintenance. But he wasn't a hydraulic specialist. Mehmet asked if he was sure. Hassan said, "I've seen this before, not on a Massey, but the principle's the same. It's a high-pressure hose with a specific fitting on each end. I've got a supplier in Tekirdağ who carries industrial hydraulic lines. If I can get the measurements right, I can build a replacement. Won't be OEM, but it'll hold." Mehmet didn't know what to say. The dealer had told him it was impossible, that it had to be factory spec, that nothing else would work. And here was Hassan, standing in his field, saying he could do it in a couple of days. Mehmet asked what it would cost. Hassan said, "Materials, maybe 3,000 lira. Labor, nothing. You're my neighbor. You've helped me out before. I'll help you now." Mehmet felt something shift in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but something close. He told Hassan to try. Hassan said he'd come back tomorrow with his tools. The next day, Hassan showed up at dawn with a toolbox, a set of calipers, and a notepad. He disconnected the damaged hose, measured both ends, noted the thread type, the pressure rating, the hose diameter. He took photos. He wrote everything down. Then he drove to Tekirdağ, walked into a hydraulic supply shop, and started asking questions. The shop didn't carry Massey Ferguson parts, but they carried industrial-grade hydraulic hose that met the same pressure specs. Hassan explained what he needed. The shop owner pulled out a catalog, cross-referenced the fittings, and said he could build it. Custom length, custom fittings, same pressure rating, ready in 24 hours. Hassan paid for it on the spot. The next afternoon, he came back with the hose, climbed back into the Massey Ferguson, and installed it. The whole job took 4 hours. When he was done, he told Mehmet to fire it up. Mehmet climbed into the cab, turned the key, let the engine warm up, then engaged the hydraulics. The pump pressurized, the hose held, no leaks, no vibration, smooth, clean, perfect. Hassan stood there with his arms crossed, watching the gauges, and nodded. "You're good," he said. "Get back to work." Mehmet sat there for a moment, staring at the controls, not quite believing it. The dealer had told him 6 weeks. Hassan had done it in 3 days. The dealer had told him it was impossible without OEM parts. Hassan had proven that was a lie. The dealer had told him to wait, to accept the delay, to let his harvest rot in the field. Hassan had told him to get back to work. Mehmet climbed down, walked over to Hassan, and tried to find the words. Hassan waved him off. "Don't," he said. "Just finish your harvest. We'll settle up later." Then he got in his truck and drove away. Mehmet finished the 40 acres that afternoon. The Massey Ferguson ran flawlessly. The hydraulic line held under full load, full heat, full pressure. No issues, no leaks, no failures. He cut the last row just as the sun was setting, unloaded the grain, and drove the tractor back to the barn. He stood there in the dim light, looking at the machine, and felt something he hadn't felt in days. Not gratitude, not relief. Anger. Pure, cold anger. Because the dealer could have done this. They had the tools. They had the knowledge. They had access to the same suppliers, the same parts, the same solutions. They just didn't care. They didn't care that his season was on the line. They didn't care that he was losing money every day. They didn't care that he'd trusted them, paid them, relied on them. They had his money, and that was all that mattered. The rest was his problem. 2 weeks later, Mehmet got a call from the dealership. The part had arrived. 6 weeks early, apparently. They wanted to know if he still needed it. Mehmet asked why it came early. The guy on the phone didn't know. Mehmet asked if they'd expedited it. The guy said no. Mehmet asked if they'd followed up with the distributor like he'd requested. The guy said they don't do that. Mehmet asked why they were calling now. The guy said, "We just wanted to let you know it's here, in case you still want it." Mehmet said, "I don't." The guy asked if he'd found another solution. Mehmet said, "Yes." The guy said, "Okay, well, if you change your mind, we'll hold it for 30 days. Mehmet hung up. He didn't explain. He didn't argue. He just hung up, because there was nothing left to say. The Massey Ferguson kept running. Mehmet finished his wheat harvest, planted his sunflowers, baled his hay. He put another 340 hours on the tractor over the next 3 months. The custom hydraulic line never failed. Not once. He checked it regularly, inspected the fittings, monitored the pressure. It was solid. Better than solid. It was proof. Proof that the dealer had lied. Proof that the system was designed to make him wait, to make him dependent, to make him helpless. And proof that he didn't need them. In November, the dealership sent a sales rep to his farm. New model year, new promotions, trade-in offers. The rep was young, enthusiastic, didn't know the history. He walked Mehmet through the new lineup, talked about horsepower upgrades, fuel efficiency improvements, financing options. He asked if Mehmet was interested in upgrading. Mehmet asked if the service department had changed. The rep didn't understand the question. Mehmet asked if they'd hired new technicians, improved their parts inventory, reduced their response time. The rep said he didn't work in service, he just handled sales. Mehmet nodded. He said, "I'm not interested." The rep asked why. Mehmet said, "Because when my tractor broke down in the middle of harvest, your service department told me to wait 2 months for a part. My neighbor fixed it in 3 days, so I'm done." The rep tried to recover. He said that was a parts issue, not a service issue. He said things had improved. He said they valued Mehmet's business. Mehmet said, "You don't. If you did, you would have helped when I needed it. You didn't. So we're done here." The rep stood there for a moment, realizing the conversation was over, then walked back to his truck and left. Mehmet didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel vindicated. He just felt tired. Tired of being treated like his problems didn't matter. Tired of being told to wait when his livelihood was on the line. Tired of a system that prioritized bureaucracy over solutions. He still owned the Massey Ferguson. He still used it every day. But he didn't trust the dealer anymore. And he never would again. Word spread. Other farmers in the area heard the story. Not from Mehmet. He didn't talk about it much. But Hassan did. He told people what happened. He told them how the dealer abandoned Mehmet in the middle of harvest. He told them how he fixed it in 3 days with off-the-shelf parts. He told them the dealer called back weeks later like nothing had happened. And people listened, because everyone had a story like that. Everyone had a moment where the dealer let them down, where the parts didn't come, where the technician never showed up, where the promises evaporated the moment the contract was signed. It wasn't unique to Massey Ferguson. It wasn't unique to this dealership. It was the system, and people were tired of it. 3 months later, another farmer in the region had a transmission issue on his Massey Ferguson 5710. Same dealership, same story. Parts on back order, could be 8 weeks. The farmer called Hassan. Hassan drove over, diagnosed the problem, found a compatible seal from an industrial supplier, installed it in 2 days. The farmer paid him 4,000 lira and sent the dealership a message. Problem solved, won't be needing your part. The dealership didn't respond. A month after that, another farmer had an electrical issue. Same thing. Dealer said it would take weeks to get a technician out. Hassan showed up the next day, traced the short circuit to a corroded connector, replaced it with a generic part, charged 1,500 lira. The farmer posted about it in the local farming group on social media. 23 people commented. 18 of them had similar stories. All of them were angry. The dealership started losing business. Not all at once, not in a dramatic collapse, just slowly, steadily, quietly. Farmers stopped calling them first. They started calling Hassan, or they started calling other independent mechanics, or they started fixing things themselves. The dealership noticed. They sent another rep out. They offered discounts. They promised faster service. They tried to rebuild trust. But trust isn't rebuilt with promises. It's rebuilt with action. And the action had already happened, just not from them. Mehmet still drives the Massey Ferguson 6713. It has 2,100 hours on it now. The custom hydraulic line is still holding. He services the tractor himself, buys parts from independent suppliers, and calls Hassan when he needs help. He hasn't contacted the dealership in over a year. He doesn't plan to. And when other farmers ask him about buying a Massey Ferguson, he tells them the truth. The tractor's fine. The dealer isn't. Buy it if you want, but don't expect them to help you when it breaks. Some people listen, some people don't, but everyone remembers the story. The story of the hydraulic line, the 6-week wait, and the neighbor who fixed it in 3 days. Because that's the thing about farming. It's not about the machinery. It's not about the brand name. It's not about the horsepower or the torque or the fuel efficiency. It's about the people who show up when things go wrong. And when the dealership says, wait, and your neighbor says, I'll fix it, the choice becomes very clear. Mehmet learned that in a wheat field in August, standing next to a broken tractor, listening to a bored voice on the phone tell him his problem didn't matter. And he won't forget it. Ever. The Massey Ferguson still runs. The dealership still exists. But the relationship is over. And in the end, that's the real failure. Not the hydraulic line, not the parts delay, not the poor service. The failure was thinking that the sale was the end of the relationship, when in reality, it was just the beginning. The dealership failed that test. Hassan passed it, and every farmer who heard the story learned the same lesson. When the machine breaks, the brand doesn't save you. The people do. And if the dealer won't be one of those people, someone else will. Mehmet stands in his barn now, looking at the Massey Ferguson, and he doesn't feel betrayed anymore. He feels clear. He knows exactly who he can count on. He knows exactly who he can't. And he knows that the next time something breaks, he won't waste time calling the dealer. He'll call Hassan. He'll call the independent supplier. He'll call anyone except the people who told him to wait while his harvest died in the field. That's not bitterness. That's not grudge holding. That's just reality. The dealer made a choice. Mehmet made a choice in response. And now they both live with the consequences. The difference is Mehmet's still farming, and the dealer is still wondering why their service bay is empty. This is what happens when you sell a machine and walk away. You lose more than a customer. You lose trust. You lose reputation. You lose the future. Because in farming, there's always another season, always another harvest, always another problem. And when that problem comes, people remember who helped and who didn't. The dealership had their chance. They chose paperwork over people. They chose policy over problems. They chose bureaucracy over urgency. And Mehmet chose someone else. That's the end of the story. Not dramatic, not tragic, just finished. The Massey Ferguson runs, the dealer lost, and the neighbor who fixed it in 3 days became the person everyone calls now. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. And that's how it will keep working long after the dealership finally figures out what they lost.